Hey, good morning, team. This is Texas Tim coming at you again today. And today's project is that we're going to use recycled pallet wood to build a table for model in-scale railroad layout. So stay with me here and I'll show you the steps I used to do that. All right. So I took the bottom frames from the pallets, and my table is going to be 6 feet long by 30 inches wide. And since these frames under the pallet only run about 40 inches to 48 inches, I would need two of them to create my 6-foot table. And I want to have a 3-inch overhang. So I've marked and measured these so that they will be the right size to fit these end pieces on. And once these two end pieces are on, the frame will be 6 feet long by 30 inches wide. And in order to make the frame sturdy and stable, I've spliced a piece of pallet board onto these two units here. You can see where they're joined together, and I splice the wood. You want to always make sure that you drill a hole before you sink a drywall screw in so you don't split the wood. So I got these two frames here to create the box, and these two end pieces will come across here and here, and I'll square it all in, and that will be the basic frame. And then next step will be to create the legs and the top. I put the top on. All right, so it'll help you to keep your project square and true. You use your framing square when you're setting your two pieces together. All right, so now we got the table framed in. You can see how using your carpenter square helps you to get everything nice and square and true. And since the tabletop, I want a 3-inch overhang on all sides of the table. So in order to do that, this frame is 24 inches wide, and it's 5'6" long. So that'll give me 3-inch overhang on each side. You can see where I joined these two frames, pallet boards, together with the splice. Everything's nice and tight. So the next thing to do is to put the table on, the deck on. We'll screw that on, and then we'll start building the legs. But that's how it looks so far. All right, so we're going to put the deck on, tabletop. And that deck is 30 inches wide by 6 feet long. So we want to make sure we keep our 3-inch overhang. Check everything on all the sides. Check and make sure it stays at 3 inches. So, and then we'll start to screw them down. I got the spaces marked where I'm going to screw everything down. Got the deck all drilled down, screwed down, but there's some places where the screw heads are a little high. They didn't countersink. Like that countersink's pretty good. I'm going to glue a piece of foam insulation board on top of this. I want to try to get those heads as flat as I can. So in cases like that, I'll use this tool. You could use a 1/2-inch drill bit, but you'd have to be very careful you didn't go too hard through it. But I'll use this tool here to countersink that hole and get it so the head of the screw goes down in there better. See how that countersunk a little bit better. Now I should be able to get that screw down in there just nicely now. Perfect. That's what I'll do for all of the high heads that are rising up. Get them screwed down tight like that. All right, so we got the deck on top of the table, and just unbelievable how expensive wood products have gotten to be these days. obviously trying to build this train table on a budget, make it small enough to fit in a house, and build a landscape up on it. But I was really shocked when I went to Home Depot to purchase a sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. I wanted smooth on one side and unfinished on the other, and that was nearly $40. That was $42. So I opted to go down and get a piece of plywood that is rough on both sides, and that was a surprising $28. It doesn't really matter if it's rough, because I'm going to put foam board on top of this anyway to smooth everything out and build a landscape on. But a good trick to remember is go to the area where they have culled lumber, culled, C-U-L-L-E-D, culled lumber. And I was able to find a sheet of 4x8 plywood, rough on both sides, and get it marked off 70% off. So I got that plywood for $10. And the 2x2s that I'm using also came from the cull pile. They're going to be for the legs. So you get them 70% off. That's pennies on the dollar. So the most expensive part of this table will actually be the foam board, the 4x8 sheet, which you had to buy a 4x8 sheet to get, a solid piece. And that's 4x8 by 1/2 inch, and that was $28. But it's gonna work, because I'll have plenty of excess to continue to build tunnels and mountainscapes and stuff. Just keep gluing the foam board together and building up and carving it and cutting it. So that's the projection. All right, so next step is to work on getting legs on, and I'm going to be using 5/16 by 3-inch bolts, butterfly wing nuts, to attach them, since I want to be able to make this table where I can break it down, like take the legs off and move it when I need to. So I'll create a system, and I'll show you how that works here as soon as I get that done. All right, for my next step, I'm going to take this 4x8 sheet of 1/2 inch insulation foam, lay it underneath the table, mark and cut it, and then eventually I will glue that to the top. So here in this next step, I'll take this Owens Corning insulation sheet, and I'll use my knife, cut it out to fit the top, and then set it aside, and then attach some cleats to the bottom of the table, and I'll explain what they're for in the next clip. All right, for this next step, we're going to take this 1.5 by 3/4 strip that we got from the culled lumber, 70% off. We're making these cleats, 1-inch cleats, and screwing them to the bottom of the table. We'll measure and cut these strips with a 45 bevel angle on each end, so they come together nicely here when it's joined, and glue them in, or screw them into these cleats, and we'll bring it up. We'll bring it up a 1/2 inch so that it'll match the top of the foam when we put the foam on. So we'll have the cleat at least a 1/2 inch higher than the top of the table. So then at that point, it'll be just time to glue the foam on and set the table up and begin the process. So we have our foam deck cut out here. This will be the top, and this remainder foam we'll cut into pieces to use it to sculpt our landscape. All right, so we marked where the cleats are going to go, and we pre-drill the holes. We just set them back in place, and it's just a matter of driving the screws up into them beneath. All right, so this last part, not so pretty. I had to countersink the screw holes and drill them in at an angle in order to hit the cleat, because I want the wood to be up at the top of the foam, as you can see here. And it's important that you use the inside measurement from corner to corner, and then when you miter, use the inside measurement to flare your cuts out. So what I'm going to do is just make a cut, put it in place, make the next cut, put the board in place, and mark where it ends down there to make that final cut on that one, and just continue on around the whole table until I've got it all trimmed in. All right, so there it is, roughed in form. You see I got the trim there. Some point, and it's a little wobbly, I might have to put some braces at some point in the future, but if I feel like prettying this up at some point in the future, I can touch it up with the orbital sander, paint the edges black, paint the legs black, and the only step I have next to do now is to glue down this foam onto the table, break it down, get it indoors, and get my track up off the ground and onto the table and start my layout. All right, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what I did here, this project, please hit the like and subscribe to ring the bell for the next creation that I come up with. All right, God bless all of you out there in internet land and train land.